The shriek of metal against concrete tore through the night before my brain could catch up to what I was seeing. A black sedan, sleek, expensive, wrong for this neighborhood, spun across the bridge like something dying, T-boned a guardrail, and dropped nose first into the river below. 4-3 heartbeats. I just sat there on my idling delivery bike, my courier bag still strapped across my chest, breath caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. The tail lights glowed red beneath the surface, sinking fast, swallowed by dark water. And then something inside me moved before I could think. I kicked the stand down, my hands already tearing at my helmet. The November wind sliced through my gray hoodie as I ran toward the shattered guardrail. The river churned below, black, furious, deep. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I kicked off my white sneakers and shrugged out of my bag. This is insane. Call someone. You can't swim that well. The car was disappearing. I jumped. The cold drove the air from my lungs like a fist. My body locked up for a terrifying second before survival instinct kicked in, and I started kicking, pulling myself deeper into water, so cold it felt like knives. The current tried to drag me sideways, but I fought toward the car, illuminated by streetlights above and its dying headlights below. Debris floated past my face. Papers, something that looked like cash, a phone tumbling through the current. Then I saw him. A young man slumped against the steering wheel, maybe mid-20s, East Asian, his short dark hair floating like ink in the water. Blood streamed from a gash on his forehead, creating delicate red ribbons in the current. His face was slack, eyes closed, body motionless in his black suit and black dress shirt, the kind of outfit that screamed money or danger or both. His hand was still near the wheel, and his wrists. My stomach dropped. His wrists were bound to the steering wheel with zip ties. Industrial ones, thick and cruel, cutting deep into his skin. This wasn't an accident. My lungs burned, screaming for air, but I forced myself closer. I grabbed the door handle and yanked. Locked. I pounded on the window with my fist, then my elbow, panic rising like acid in my throat. The car tilted suddenly, sinking faster, and the man's eyes snapped open, dark, sharp, terrified even through the haze of oxygen deprivation. He was drowning right in front of me. I kicked back to the surface, gasping, choking on river water that tasted like oil and city runoff. My bike was still at the top of the embankment, the tire iron I kept strapped to the frame for emergencies glinting under the streetlights. I grabbed it with shaking hands and dove again, my arms and legs already aching from cold and exertion. I swung the iron at the driver's side window with everything I had. The glass spiderwebbed, then exploded inward. Water rushed into the car, and I reached through the jagged opening, slicing my forearm on broken glass. I grabbed his shoulder, solid muscle beneath soaked fabric, and his body jerked, convulsing. Bubbles streamed from his nose and mouth. I hooked my other arm through the window and used the tire iron to saw frantically at the zip ties around his wrists. The car groaned, metal shrieking as it tilted deeper. The first tie snapped, then the second. I grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He was heavy, dead weight, tall, easily over 6 feet, and for one horrible moment, I thought we were both going to die down here in this dark water. But then his body came free, slumping against me, and I kicked off from the sinking car with the last of my strength. We broke the surface together. I sucked in air, coughing and gasping, my arms locked around his chest as I struggled toward the rocky shore. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. I dragged him through the shallows and up onto the concrete embankment, my long dark hair plastered to my face, my hoodie heavy with water. I collapsed beside him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely position them correctly on his chest. I locked my fingers together and started compressions, counting under my breath. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. River water and blood dripped onto his soaked black dress shirt. His face looked younger up close, vulnerable in a way that contradicted everything about the designer suit and the gun I'd glimpsed in the shoulder holster beneath his jacket. "Please," I whispered.
"Please don't be dead."
On the second round of rescue breaths, he convulsed. Water erupted from his mouth as he choked and coughed, his body curling onto its side. He was alive. In the distance, I heard sirens. Someone must have seen the crash. Help was coming. But then the man's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak, but desperate. His eyes, dark, intense, burning with something between fear and command, locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me in place. "No," he rasped, his voice barely audible, accent clipping the word sharp. "No police. No hospital." I stared at him, at the blood still seeping from his temple, at the raw, bleeding wounds on his wrists where the zip ties had cut through skin. And then my eyes dropped to his open jacket, to the leather shoulder holster strapped across his ribs, to the gun secured inside it. My breath caught. The sirens were getting closer. Red and blue lights already strobed against the low clouds, reflecting off the water. The man tried to sit up, grimaced, and fell back with a stifled groan. His hand tightened on my wrist, and this time I saw it clearly. The fear in his eyes wasn't fear of dying. It was fear of being found. My heart was a drum in my chest. I didn't know this man. Didn't know why someone had tied him to a steering wheel and sent him into a river to drown. Didn't know why he carried a gun, or why the thought of police made him look more terrified than drowning had. But I knew one thing from growing up in neighborhoods where you learned fast what questions not to ask. People who saw too much didn't live long. "All right," I heard myself whisper. "No hospital." The man's eyes closed in relief, his grip on my wrist loosening. His head lolled to the side, unconscious again. Headlights swept across the bridge above. Voices shouted. Flashlight beams danced across the water. I had maybe 30 seconds before first responders swarmed the area. I grabbed the man under his arms and started dragging him toward the footpath that led up to where I'd left my bike. Every muscle in my body screamed. He was all lean muscle and sharp angles beneath that soaked designer suit, and I slipped twice on wet rocks, nearly dropping him. But somehow I made it to the top of the embankment. My car, my beat-up sedan that I used for the big delivery orders that wouldn't fit on my bike, was parked at the usual turnout where I always finish my route before calling it a night. Somehow, I got him to the passenger side and wrestled him in. He slumped against the window, leaving a smear of blood on the glass. My hands shook as I buckled him in, my gray hoodie dripping onto the seat. A flashlight beam swept across the bridge behind us. I slammed the passenger door, ran around to the driver's side, and started the engine. I pulled away from the curb with my headlights off, merging into the sparse late-night traffic just as emergency vehicles screamed past in the opposite direction. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. In the passenger seat, the man I'd pulled from the river breathed in shallow, rattling gasps. Blood dripped onto my upholstery. River water pooled beneath him. And I realized with cold, creeping certainty that I'd just made either the biggest mistake of my life, or saved it. I couldn't tell which yet. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we dive in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It genuinely warms my heart to see our storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of support helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the gravel driveway of the tiny bungalow I rented on the outskirts of the city. My hands were still shaking. The man hadn't moved since I'd buckled him in. His head rested against the window, breath fogging the glass in irregular patterns that at least confirmed he was still alive. In the dim glow of the streetlight, I could see his face more clearly now, younger than I'd first thought. Sharp features, the kind of face that probably commanded rooms when he wasn't half drowned and bleeding. Getting him inside was a nightmare. He was dead weight, his expensive suit soaked through, and clinging to a body that was all muscle and zero cooperation. I got my shoulder under his arm and half-dragged, half-carried him up the 2 concrete steps to my front door. My gray hoodie was still damp, my dark pants soaked through, my white sneakers squishing with every step. Inside, the living room was exactly as I'd left it that morning.
Small.
Modest. The second-hand couch with the faded floral pattern my landlord had included in the lease. Everything in my life fit into 900 square feet of rented space, and now I was dragging a man with a gun and a designer suit into the center of it. I lowered him onto the couch as gently as I could. He groaned, a sound that came from somewhere deep in his chest, but his eyes didn't open. Blood had dried in dark streaks down the side of his face. The zip tie marks on his wrists were raw and seeping, the skin angry and torn. I stood there for a moment, dripping river water onto my floor, staring at the unconscious stranger I'd just committed a felony for. What the hell have I done? I stripped out of my wet clothes in the bathroom, toweled off with shaking hands, and pulled on sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. In the mirror, my reflection looked haunted. My brown skin was ashen underneath, my long dark hair plastered to my skull in wet ropes. The cut on my forearm from the car window was still bleeding. I wrapped it quickly with gauze from under the sink and went back to the living room. He hadn't moved. I knelt beside the couch and checked his pulse again. Steady, stronger than before. That was good. That was something. I peeled back his jacket carefully, revealing the shoulder holster and the gun secured inside it. My stomach clenched. I'd never touched a gun before. Didn't want to start now. But I couldn't leave it on him. The holster's buckle was slick with river water. My fingers fumbled with it twice before it came free. I set the entire rig on the coffee table as far from the couch as possible and turned my attention to his injuries. The head wound was the worst. I grabbed my first aid kit and got to work. Cleaning the gash required pulling his head into my lap, tilting his face toward the lamplight. His skin was cold under my fingers, pale despite his East Asian complexion. I could see the shadow of his pulse beating in his throat. His features were sharp even in unconsciousness, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. There was a small scar along his jawline, old and faded, that made me wonder what kind of life he'd lived before tonight. His eyes snapped open without warning. I jerked back, nearly dropping the gauze. Those dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his hand shot up and caught my wrist, the same desperate grip from the riverbank. Where? His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. My house, I said quickly. You're safe. I didn't call anyone. You asked me not to. His gaze swept the room, cataloging everything. The second-hand furniture, the delivery company jacket hanging by the door, the courier bag I'd dropped on the floor. When his eyes came back to me, something in them had shifted. Calculation replacing panic. You should have left me, he said. You would have died. Better than this. His accent wrapped around the words, making them sound almost lyrical despite their weight. I pulled my wrist free, anger flaring hot in my chest. I just dragged you out of a river. Saved your life. Broke about 6 laws getting you here. The least you could do is not act like I made a mistake. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those eyes.
Pain, maybe.
Or recognition. You don't understand what you've done. Then explain it to me. Before he could answer, headlights swept across the front windows.
Bright.
Too bright. My heart stopped. I moved to the window and looked out through the gap in the curtains. 2 black SUVs sat in my driveway, engines running. As I watched, 4 men got out. They moved with the kind of precision that made me think of soldiers, and they were heading straight for my door. Oh, God. I turned back to him. Who are they? His face had gone even paler. Mine. Your what? My men. He tried to sit up, grimaced, and fell back. You need to run.
Now.
But it was already too late. A knock sounded at the door. Not loud, almost polite, except there was something about it that made every instinct I had screamed danger. I crossed to the door, on legs that felt like water. Who is it? Miss Richardson? The voice was smooth, cultured. We're here about the incident on the bridge. We know you have someone inside who needs medical attention. My blood ran cold. They knew my name. They knew I'd been at the bridge. They knew everything. I don't know what you're talking about. I called through the door. Please open the door, Miss Richardson. We're not the police. That's what scared me. I looked back at him. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, and he gave a single small nod. Permission or warning, I couldn't tell which. I opened the door. The man on my doorstep was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that smiled even when his mouth didn't. Behind him, 3 other men stood in formation, their jackets unbuttoned in a way that suggested easy access to whatever they carried underneath. Miss Richardson, the young man said, bowing slightly. My name is Jay. I'm Mr. Holt's associate. I apologize for the intrusion at this late hour. Mr. Holt, the man you pulled from the river. Jay's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. We've been looking for him all evening. Imagine our relief when we tracked him here. Tracked. The word sent ice down my spine. Jay didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped past me into the living room, his men following. I stood frozen by the door, watching as Jay crossed to the couch where Adrian lay. He said something in Korean, rapid and low. Adrian responded in the same language, his voice weak but firm. Whatever he said made Jay's eyes snap to me. You saw the restraints, Jay said. It wasn't a question. My mouth went dry. I saw him drowning. I cut him free. Did you see who put them there?
No.
It was just him in the car. Jay studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket. My heart stopped. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was my courier bag, the one I'd dropped on the bridge. You left this behind, he said, setting it on my coffee table right next to the gun. I took the liberty of looking inside. Your license, your delivery receipts. He paused. You have a sister, don't you? Maya? Terror, hot and sharp, cut through my chest. Don't you dare. I'm not threatening you, Miss Richardson. Jay's voice was perfectly calm. I'm explaining your situation. You saw something tonight. You know something that makes you valuable. And valuable things need to be protected. I don't know anything. You know Mr. Holt was meant to drown in that river. You're the only witness to that fact. Jay picked up my car keys from where I dropped them on the side table. You saw what you shouldn't have. Now you belong to us. The words hit like a physical blow. I looked at Adrian, expecting contradiction, but he just watched me with those unreadable dark eyes, his jaw tight. I saved his life, I said, hating how my voice shook. That's all I did. And we're grateful, Jay said. He gestured to one of his men. But gratitude doesn't change reality. You're coming with us. Mr. Holt needs proper medical care, and you need protection. There are people who would very much like to know what you saw tonight. And if I don't want it? Jay's smile never wavered. Then your sister Maya has a very unfortunate accident on her walk back from the library. She studies late on Tuesdays, doesn't she? Gets back to her dorm around 11. My vision went white at the edges. Every fiber of my being wanted to launch myself at this man. But I'd grown up in neighborhoods where you learned fast that violence only worked when you had power. And right now, I had none. Fine, I whispered. I'll come. The SUV's interior was all leather and tinted windows. I sat in the back, wedged between Jay and another man whose name I didn't know. Adrian was in the front passenger seat, his head back, eyes closed. They drove in silence through the city, heading into the hills where the houses got bigger and the streetlights got farther apart. The mansion at the end of the private drive was massive. All clean lines and enormous windows that glowed with warm light. Inside was worse, marble floors, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. My wet sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as Jay led me down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire bungalow. You'll stay here tonight, Jay said. Someone will bring you dinner. Don't try to leave. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I heard the lock turn. I was a prisoner. The bedroom was beautiful in the way expensive things always were. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. The bed was enormous, covered in white linens. There was an en-suite bathroom with marble countertops and a shower big enough for 4 people. I pulled out my phone. No service. They'd jammed it somehow. I didn't sleep. I lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, watching the city lights and thinking about zip ties and dark eyes and the sister I might never see again if I made the wrong move. Morning came slowly. Around 9, Jay appeared at my door. Mr. Holt is awake and would like to speak with you. He led me through the house. I tried to memorize the layout, but it was too much, too big. Jay stopped at what looked like a study, dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and behind the desk, looking like he hadn't nearly drowned less than 12 hours ago, was Adrian. He'd showered, changed into fresh clothes. Black pants and a crisp white shirt. The gash on his temple had been properly stitched and bandaged. But it was his eyes that caught me. They were sharper now, fully alert, and they tracked my movement with predatory focus. Miss Richardson, he said, his accent less pronounced than last night, but still present. Please sit. There was a chair across from his desk. I sat. I owe you an apology, he continued. What Jay said last night was crude, but not inaccurate. You are in danger because of what you witnessed. I witnessed you drowning. You witnessed an execution. He said it calmly, like discussing the weather. Someone in my organization decided I was more valuable dead than alive. They bound me to that car and sent me into the river to drown quietly. No gunshots, no evidence. Just an accident. My hands tightened in my lap. Who? That's what I need to find out. He stood, moving around the desk. The restraints you saw are evidence of conspiracy, which means whoever ordered my death will want to eliminate anyone who can confirm they were there.
Me. You.
He leaned against the desk, close enough that I could see the exhaustion still lingering in his features despite the clean clothes and professional medical care. I can offer you protection, he said. Money for your cooperation. Assurance that your sister will remain untouched. You mean I'm still a prisoner? Something flickered in his expression. You're an asset. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Before he could respond, the sound of gunfire shattered the morning. It was distant at first, outside the house, then closer. Glass exploded somewhere on the first floor. Men shouted in Korean. More gunfire, impossibly loud. Adrian moved faster than I would have thought possible for someone who'd nearly died 12 hours ago. He grabbed my arm and hauled me toward a door in the far corner of the study. It opened onto a narrow service corridor. "Go," he said, pushing me forward. "Service exit at the end." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." I ran. Behind me, I heard him shouting orders.
Heard more gunfire.
The corridor was dim, lined with pipes and wiring. My hands scraped against the walls as I ran. The service exit was exactly where he'd said, a plain metal door with a push bar. I hit it hard, and suddenly I was outside in a narrow alley between buildings. Smoke drifted from somewhere out of sight. Footsteps pounded behind me. I spun, expecting Adrian, and found myself staring at a man I didn't recognize. Older, maybe 50, with a gun in his hand and blood on his shirt. His eyes locked on me. "You." The man's voice was thick with rage. He raised the gun. "The courier girl. You ruined everything." He was supposed to drown quiet. A shot rang out. The man stumbled, his gun dropping, and fell to his knees. Behind him, Adrian stood in the doorway, his own weapon raised, his face utterly cold. He fired again, and the man collapsed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I'd never seen anyone die before. Adrian lowered his gun and crossed to me. His hand caught my arm, pulling me away from the wall. "We need to move."
Now.
I told Adrian I wasn't leaving. Not hiding in some safe house while he played target. Not running back to my tiny bungalow to wait for news that would probably come in the form of a bullet. "You're not trained for this," he said, his voice tight. We were standing in the kitchen of his downtown penthouse, the one Jay had moved us to after the mansion became a crime scene. Dawn light filtered through bulletproof glass, turning everything gray and cold. "No," I agreed, pulling my hoodie back on. The gray fabric was still damp from the river 3 days ago, but it felt like armor. Like my skin. "But I'm invisible. You said it yourself. Nobody looks at delivery people. We're part of the scenery." Adrian's jaw clenched. The bandage on his temple was fresh, white against his olive skin. "Maya, you have a list of suspects. People close enough to know your schedule, your security protocols." I picked up the folder Jay had compiled. 12 names. 12 people Adrian trusted. Let me do what I do. I know this city. I know the streets, the shortcuts, the people who actually see things because everyone else is too important to notice them. He stared at me for a long moment, those dark eyes unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call in rapid Korean. When he hung up, he looked tired, older than his years. "Jay will give you the route. But if anything feels wrong, I'll run." I lied. The streets welcomed me back like an old friend. My delivery bike felt right beneath me, the worn seat conforming to my body, the familiar weight of the insulated bag strapped to my back. Jay had filled it with actual orders, legitimate deliveries to maintain my cover. But tucked inside my jacket was something else. Photos of the 12 suspects. Places they frequented. Patterns Jay's team had mapped, but couldn't get close enough to confirm. I started my route on the east side, the industrial stretch where restaurants clustered near the warehouse district. Third stop was a Korean grocery that always ordered late lunch delivery. The owner, Mrs. Choi, barely glanced at me as I dropped off her package. She never did. But the man at the fruit stand across the street looked up. Just for a second. Just long enough for our eyes to meet before he went back to arranging apples with meticulous care. Too meticulous. The kind of careful that comes from having nothing else to do but watch. I checked the photo later, 2 blocks away, hands shaking as I pulled it from my jacket. Mr. Kim. Fruit vendor. 5 years at that corner. On Adrian's list because he'd been hired the same month Adrian took over his father's organization.
Too convenient.
two perfectly positioned across from three restaurants that catered to Adrian's network. I circled back an hour later with a legitimate delivery to the noodle shop next to Mrs. Choi's store. This time I paid attention. Kim's stand had a clear sight line to the grocery's back entrance, where shipments came in, where money changed hands, where Adrian's people met with suppliers who asked no questions. Kim was on his phone when I walked past. He turned slightly, giving me his back, but I caught the reflection in the noodle shop's window. He was watching me, not the street, not the traffic.
Me.
My pulse kicked up, but I kept my pace steady.
Casual.
Delivery girl finishing her route, nothing more. I made 3 more stops, then doubled back toward Kim's corner on foot, my bike locked up 2 streets over. I'd changed into a different jacket, pulled my hair up. Not much of a disguise, but enough that someone glancing wouldn't immediately connect me to the courier from earlier. I bought an apple from his stand. His hands were soft. No calluses from handling fruit all day. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the street, then back to my face. There was a moment, barely a heartbeat, where something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Calculation. You work around here? His accent was thick, but his English was too smooth, too practiced. Delivery, I said, taking a bite of the apple. It was mealy old. The kind of fruit someone bought in bulk because they weren't actually selling it to make a living. Long shift today. Dangerous neighborhood at night. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Pretty girl, like you should be careful. The threat was so casual it took my breath away. I smiled back, playing dumb, playing invisible. I'm always careful. I walked away slowly, feeling his eyes on my back like a target painted between my shoulders. 2 blocks later, I pulled out my phone and texted Jay a single word. Confirmed. Then I kept walking, every nerve in my body screaming that I'd just made myself bait, and the trap was already closing. The warehouse smelled like rust and old motor oil. I stood behind Adrian in the shadows near a stack of shipping crates, my breath shallow, every muscle coiled tight. Jay and 2 other men flanked us, hands resting on concealed weapons. The building was supposed to be neutral ground, empty except for us and the man Adrian had called here. Daniel Park walked through the loading bay doors alone, hands visible, expression carefully neutral. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, wearing an expensive coat that looked out of place in the industrial decay around us. Adrian had known him since childhood, trusted him with shipment schedules, routes, safe house locations. You came, Adrian said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. You said it was urgent. Daniel stopped 20 feet away, far enough to run, close enough to talk. His eyes slid to me, then back to Adrian. This about the girl? This is about someone trying to kill me. Adrian's hand moved to his side, resting on the gun holstered there. Someone who knew exactly where I'd be that night, who knew which route I'd take home, who knew my security details rotation schedule. Daniel's face went carefully blank. Too blank. Adrian. The zip ties were industrial grade. The kind we use in the shipping division. Your division. The silence stretched like a wire pulled taut. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the weight of Jay's tension beside me. I'm sorry. Daniel's voice cracked. I didn't want this. But you are going to destroy everything your father built. Peace with the Eastern Syndicate? They murdered 6 of our people last year. And you wanted to shake hands and pretend. So you decided to drown me instead. Adrian's voice was ice. It was supposed to be clean.
Quick.
No war, no power vacuum. Kim had it planned perfectly. The name hit me like a fist.
Kim.
My fruit vendor. The man who'd watched me with calculating eyes. Adrian went very still. Kim. Daniel's face drained of color as he realized his mistake. His hand started to move toward his pocket, but Jay was faster. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse like thunder, and Daniel dropped, clutching his shoulder, screaming. Then the lights went out. Gunfire erupted from above. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning, bullets sparking off metal, punching through crates. I hit the ground, Adrian's body covering mine as what exploded inches from my head. "Move!" Jay shouted, returning fire at shapes on the catwalks above. Adrian hauled me up, his hand iron around my wrist, and we ran. More gunfire chased us, the warehouse erupting into chaos. Adrian's men scattered, taking cover, shooting at shadows. Someone screamed. We made it to a side exit, burst through into an alley. The night air hit my face, cold and sharp. Adrian pulled me left, toward where we'd parked, but headlights flared at the alley's end, blinding. He yanked me right instead, deeper into the maze of alleys behind the warehouse district. Behind us, shouts in Korean. Running footsteps. The warehouse was a war zone now, and we were exposed. "This way," I gasped, recognizing the cross street ahead. I knew these alleys, had made deliveries through here 100 times. There was a gap between buildings, a shortcut through to. Arms locked around me from behind. A hand clamped over my mouth, yanking me backward into darkness. I saw Adrian spin, saw his gun come up, then something hit him from the side, and he went down hard. I thrashed, tried to scream, but the grip was unbreakable. I was dragged through a doorway I hadn't seen, into a building that reeked of rotting produce. The door slammed shut. Locks clicked. "Hello again, delivery girl." Kim stepped into the dim light from a single hanging bulb. He wasn't wearing his fruit vendor clothes anymore. Now he was in tactical gear, a gun holstered at his hip, his soft hands holding a phone that was already ringing. Outside, the gunfire had changed. Different weapons, different rhythm. A third party had joined the fight. Eastern Syndicate, Kim said, almost conversationally, as he answered the phone. Right on time. I told them where to find Adrian's meeting. They've wanted him dead for months. My blood ran cold. Kim spoke rapidly in Korean, then hung up. His smile was all teeth. "Your boyfriend is either dead in that alley or about to be. And you," he grabbed my arm, zip ties appearing in his other hand. "You're going to help me finish what we started. Adrian has a weakness now. Something he'll trade everything for." The zip ties bit into my wrists, and I realized with sick clarity that I'd been right that night on the riverbank. I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Kim dragged me through the building's back rooms, past crates of rotting fruit and empty shelves, until we reached what looked like an old office. The windows were boarded up, but I could still hear gunfire in the distance, sporadic now. Winding down or moving away. I couldn't tell which. He shoved me into a metal chair and zip-tied my ankles to the legs. My wrists were already going numb, the plastic cutting into skin. The same industrial ties that had bound Adrian to that steering wheel. Kim noticed me staring at them. Poetic, isn't it? He pulled up a crate and sat down across from me, relaxed. Like we were having coffee instead of him holding me hostage. I used the same ones on Adrian that night. Bought them from his own warehouse. His father's warehouse, technically. The old man knew how to run an empire. Adrian? He shook his head. Adrian got soft. 5 years, he continued, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it. The smoke curled toward the ceiling, acrid and thick. 5 years I've been positioning myself. The harmless fruit vendor. The invisible immigrant no one looks at twice. You know about being invisible, don't you, Maya? My name in his mouth made my skin crawl. How do you know about you? He laughed. I know everything. I've been watching Adrian for years. Every meeting, every deal, every weakness. And then you jumped off that bridge, and became his biggest weakness of all. I'm nobody. You are nobody. He leaned forward, eyes glittering in the dim light. Now you're the one thing Adrian Holt values more than his empire. I saw it 3 days ago when Jay pulled up to your bungalow. I saw how he looked at you in the mansion before the shooting started. I've been doing this too long not to recognize a man who's found something worth more than power. My mind raced, trying to find an angle, a way out. The zip ties were too tight. The door was closed. Kim had a gun, and I had nothing but the knowledge that Adrian was out there somewhere, possibly bleeding out in an alley. The Eastern Syndicate will kill him, I said. If they haven't already. Maybe. Maybe not. Adrian's resourceful. His father trained him well, even if he rejected everything the old man stood for. Kim took a drag, exhaled slowly. But it doesn't matter. If the Syndicate kills him, I consolidate power in the vacuum. If he survives, I have you. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, then turned the screen toward me. It was a live feed. Adrian, bloody, limping, surrounded by Jay and one other man I didn't recognize. They were pinned down behind a dumpster, outnumbered. As I watched, Adrian checked his gun, said something to Jay, and then his phone buzzed. Kim sent a text. I watched Adrian pull out his phone, watched his face change as he read it. What did you say? My voice cracked. That I have you. That if he wants to see you alive, he needs to come to the old dockyard on Pier 17. Alone. Unarmed. Kim pocketed his phone. And that he has 2 hours to decide what matters more. His empire or his courier girl. He won't come. He's not stupid. No, he's not stupid. He's sentimental. Dangerously, fatally sentimental. Kim stood, grinding his cigarette under his boot. His father would have let you die, would have hunted me down later and made an example. But Adrian? Adrian wants peace. Adrian wants a different life. Adrian thinks he can have both power and humanity. He walked to the boarded window, peering through a crack at the street below. I've been building this for 5 years. Allies in his organization who agree with me. Connections with the Eastern Syndicate's second-tier leadership who are tired of their boss's caution. When Adrian dies and the Syndicate's leader follows shortly after, I'll broker a new arrangement. A profitable one. One that respects what this city really is. A war zone, I whispered. A market. He turned back to me, and his smile was cold. And I'm about to corner it. His phone buzzed. He checked it, and his smile widened. He's coming. Of course he's coming. He's already making arrangements to transfer control of his accounts, his properties, his entire network. Kim crouched in front of me, his face inches from mine. He's going to hand me everything I've worked 5 years for, wrapped up in a bow, just to save your life. And then you'll kill us both anyway. Probably. He patted my cheek, and I jerked away. But I'll let him believe otherwise. For a little while. That's the kindness I can offer. Hope, right until the end. He stood, checked his gun, and walked toward the door. We leave in an hour. Try to run, and I'll put a bullet in your knee. Scream, and I'll gag you. Understand? I didn't answer. Didn't give him the satisfaction. He left, locking the door behind him, and I was alone in the darkness with my racing heart and the knowledge that Adrian was walking into a trap to save me. Just like I jumped into a river to save him. The dockyard was a graveyard of shipping containers and rusted cranes silhouetted against the night sky. Kim's men hauled me out of the van, my legs barely supporting me after hours bound to that chair. The zip ties on my wrists had been replaced with rope, tight enough to make my fingers tingle and go cold. They positioned me under a flickering floodlight near the water's edge, close enough that I could hear the river lapping against the pilings. The same river I'd pulled Adrian from. It felt like a lifetime ago. Kim stood beside me, checking his watch. He's late. Maybe he's smarter than you think, I said, though my voice shook. He's exactly as smart as I think. Which is why Kim stopped, tilting his head. There. Headlights cut through the darkness. A single car, moving slowly between the containers. It stopped 50 yards away, engine idling, then cut off. The door opened. Adrian stepped out, hands raised and empty. Even from this distance, I could see the blood on his shirt, the way he favored his left side. He'd been hit in the fight at the warehouse. But he was alive. He was here. That's far enough, Kim called out. Adrian stopped, silhouetted against his car's headlights. Let her go first. You know that's not how this works. Kim pulled out a tablet, held it up. Transfer codes. All of them. Accounts, properties, supply chains, everything. Then I verify, and she walks. How do I know you won't kill her anyway? Kim shrugged. You don't. But you're here, so you've already made your choice. Adrian started walking forward, slow and deliberate. He stopped at the edge of the light, close enough now that I could see his face. His eyes found mine, and something passed between us.
Not goodbye.
Something else. A promise or a plan, or maybe just understanding that we'd both made the same stupid choice. The codes, Kim demanded. Adrian pulled out his phone with careful movements. Started reading off numbers. Account information. Passwords. Everything he'd built, everything his father had left him, handed over in a monotone voice that betrayed nothing. Kim's man verified each one on a laptop balanced on a crate. After the fifth account, he nodded. They're legitimate. That's when I heard it. The rumble of engines. Multiple vehicles coming fast. Kim's head snapped up. What did you? I didn't, Adrian said, and for the first time, I heard fear in his voice. SUVs roared into the dockyard from 3 directions, boxing us in. Doors flew open and men poured out, weapons raised. Not Adrian's men. Eastern Syndicate, marked by the red bands on their arms. Kim. A voice boomed across the dock. We had a deal. You said Adrian would be here alone. Vulnerable. Kim's face went white. This wasn't. I didn't call them. Someone did. Adrian's eyes locked on Kim. You leaked the location to too many people. Got sloppy. Gunfire erupted. Kim's men scattered, returning fire. The syndicate advanced, using containers for cover. Kim grabbed my arm, yanking me backward toward the water, using me as a shield. Then Adrian moved. He crossed the distance between us in seconds, slamming into Kim with enough force to break his grip on me. They went down hard, struggling. I stumbled backward, hands still bound, and hit a ladder. The crane. A massive loading crane towering above the dock. Adrian landed a punch that sent Kim sprawling, then grabbed my arm. Can you climb? My hands. He pulled a knife from his boot, cut through the ropes in one savage motion. My hands screamed as blood rushed back, but I grabbed the ladder anyway. We climbed, bullets sparking off metal below us, the firefight intensifying. Up and up, my arms shaking, lungs burning. Adrian stayed below me, between me and the gunfire. We reached the crane's control cabin, a small enclosed space 50 feet above the dock. Adrian gasped into his phone. Pier 17. Eastern Syndicate. At least 20. Glass shattered. Adrian jerked, phone flying from his hand. Blood bloomed across his shoulder, and he went down. Adrian. I caught him before he fell through the open cabin door, his weight nearly pulling us both over the edge. Below, Kim was shouting orders, repositioning his men. The syndicate was closing in. We were trapped in a metal cage in the sky, and Adrian was bleeding. His hand found mine, grip weak. The crane, he rasped. Controls. Make noise. Jay needs to find us. I looked at the panel, at buttons and levers I didn't understand. Then I grabbed the largest lever and pulled. The crane's engine roared to life. The boom swung wide, knocking into a stack of containers. They toppled with a sound like thunder, crashing into the syndicate's position, scattering them. Below, headlights appeared at the dockyard entrance. Jay's reinforcements finally arriving. Adrian's had lolled against my shoulder, his blood warm on my hands. Told you, he whispered. Resourceful. Jay's men got us out during the chaos. I don't remember much of the extraction, just Adrian's weight against me in the back seat, his blood soaking through the makeshift pressure bandage I'd wrapped around his shoulder, and Jay's voice on the phone speaking rapid Korean as we raced through empty streets. The penthouse was different from the last one. Higher up, more secure, with bulletproof glass and panic room doors that looked like they could survive a missile strike. A doctor was already waiting, a severe woman in her 60s who took one look at Adrian and started barking orders. They laid him on the dining room table. I stood useless in the corner, my hands still shaking, still covered in his blood, while the doctor worked. The bullet had gone through, she said.
Clean.
Lucky. He need antibiotics, rest, and someone to watch for infection. He'll live, she told me, meeting my eyes. This time. After she left, after Jay posted guards at every entrance and swept the penthouse for the third time, after Adrian was moved to a bedroom and hooked to an 4, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city. Dawn was breaking, painting the skyline in shades of gray and gold. How many more times? How many more shootouts, betrayals, narrow escapes before our luck ran out? Adrian had tried to end this, had wanted peace with the Eastern Syndicate, a treaty that would stop the bleeding. And his own people had tried to kill him for it. I turned to find Jay standing in the doorway, watching me. His face was exhausted, a cut above his eyebrow from the dockyard fight. Kim? I asked. Escaped in the chaos. We're hunting him.
He paused.
The Syndicate lost men too. They think we set them up. But Kim set everyone up. They don't know that. All they know is they responded to intelligence about Adrian being vulnerable, and it turned into a bloodbath. Jay rubbed his face. This is going to escalate. Full war. Unless we can prove Kim played both sides. I walked to where Jay had set down his bag, pulled out his tablet. You have surveillance from the warehouse, from the dockyard. Everything. Maya. Adrian wanted peace. He was willing to die for it tonight. I pulled up the files, started reviewing footage.
There.
Kim at the warehouse, his men in position before the meeting. Kim on the phone, clearly coordinating. And at the dockyard, footage of him arguing with his lieutenant about the syndicate arriving early. He manipulated everyone. Adrian, Daniel, the syndicate leadership. If they see this, they won't meet with us. Not after tonight. I looked at Jay, at this man who'd threatened my sister to force my cooperation, who'd just spent the last 6 hours keeping us alive. They'll meet with me. Absolutely not. I'm nobody, remember? I'm the courier. The civilian Adrian saved. I pulled the footage onto a flash drive, my hands steady now, purpose crystallizing. I walk in alone, unarmed, with proof of what Kim did. They listen or they kill me, but either way, Adrian tried. Either way, this wasn't his betrayal. He'll never allow it. He's unconscious. By the time he wakes up, it'll be done. I pocketed the drive, grabbed my hoodie from where someone had draped it over a chair. It was clean now, the river water and blood washed out, but it still felt like armor. Where's their territory? Jay stared at me for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he almost smiled. You're insane. You know that. I jumped into a river for a stranger. Insane was already established. He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke briefly in Korean. When he hung up, his face was grim. The Eastern Syndicate's main operations run out of a restaurant in Koreatown. I have a contact there, someone neutral. He can get a message to their enforcer, a man named Mail. If anyone will listen, it's him. Then that's where I'm going. Maya. Jay caught my arm. If this goes wrong, if they decide you're part of Adrian's deception, they won't just kill you. They'll make an example. These aren't the kind of people who show mercy. Good thing I'm just a delivery girl then. I pulled free, walked toward the door. Tell Adrian I'll be back. Tell him. I stopped, swallowed hard. Tell him I understand now. Why he wanted peace. Some things are worth the risk. Jay nodded once, respect and resignation warring on his face. He handed me a phone. This has one number programmed. My contact. When you're ready, he'll arrange the meeting. I took the phone, the flash drive heavy in my pocket like a grenade. Outside the windows, the city was waking up. Somewhere out there, Kim was planning his next move. The syndicate was mobilizing for war. And I was about to walk into enemy territory with nothing but the truth and the hope that it would be enough. I thought about Adrian tied to that steering wheel, sinking into darkness. About how I jumped without thinking, without knowing if I could save him. I was jumping again. This time, I knew exactly what I was risking. The restaurant was closed when I arrived, metal gate half lowered, a single light burning in the back. Jay's contact, an older man who introduced himself only as Mr. Song, let me in through the kitchen entrance. He said nothing, just gestured for me to follow him through the steam and steel to a private room in the back. Mail was waiting. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with scars that told stories and eyes that missed nothing. Two men flanked him, hands resting on weapons they didn't bother to hide. You have 5 minutes, Mail said in perfect English. Convince me not to kill you for wasting my time. I set the flash drive on the table between us. Kim played you. Played all of us. This is proof. For 3 minutes and 40 seconds, we watched footage in silence. Kim coordinating the warehouse ambush. Kim on the phone with someone, promising Adrian's location. Kim's face when the syndicate arrived at the dockyard too early, ruining his careful timing. And finally, audio from the office where he'd held me, his voice clear as he described his 5-year plan to eliminate both Adrian and the syndicate's leadership. When it finished, Mail sat back. His expression hadn't changed, but something had shifted in the room. Where is Kim now? We're looking. So are you, probably. I kept my voice steady. But he's not the point. The point is Adrian was telling the truth.
He wanted peace.
Still wants it. He was willing to trade his entire empire tonight to save one person. That's not a man planning betrayal. That's a man with a weakness. But Mail's tone had lost its edge. Maybe. Or maybe it's a man who's tired of bleeding his city dry. I leaned forward. How many of your people died tonight? How many of his? And for what? So Kim could take over and start the cycle again. Mail's jaw tightened. He looked at his men, then back at me. You came here alone, unarmed, knowing we could kill you. Yes. Why? Because some things are worth the risk. And because I'm really tired of people getting shot. My voice cracked slightly. Adrian's been shot twice in 4 days trying to protect me, trying to end this. I figured it was my turn to risk something. Mail stood. For a heartbeat, I thought he was reaching for his gun. Instead, he picked up the flash drive. I'll bring this to Lee May. She'll decide if your Adrian gets his meeting. He paused at the door. You're either very brave or very stupid, delivery girl. Can it be both? His laugh was sharp and surprised. Maybe Adrian's not as weak as I thought. The meeting happened 3 days later in a neutral location, a law office high above the city, all glass and steel and lawyers who specialized in making illegal things look legitimate on paper. Adrian was there in a dark suit, his arm in a sling, Jay at his shoulder. Lime arrived with Mail and 4 others, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes like flint. I sat in the corner, invisible again, watching as they negotiated territories, trade routes, protocols for resolving disputes. As Adrian offered concessions and Lime countered. As peace, fragile and contingent, took shape in legal language and carefully worded clauses. When they signed, no one celebrated. This wasn't victory. It was survival. Afterward, in the elevator descending to ground level, Adrian turned to me. "You're reckless. I learned from the best." "I'm serious, Maya. Walking into their territory alone got us this treaty." I met his eyes. "And I'm not done. If this peace is going to hold, you need better intelligence. Someone who knows the streets, who people don't notice, who can see when things are going wrong before they explode." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want a seat at the table. Intelligence coordinator. I help maintain the peace we just bought with blood." Jay, standing behind Adrian, actually smiled. She'd be good at it. Adrian stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. Partners." "Partners," I agreed. 3 months later, Kim's body was found in a warehouse on the east side. No one claimed responsibility. No one needed to. The city settled into an uneasy peace, enforced by a treaty that held because both sides were too exhausted to break it. Adrian's organization restructured, legitimacy creeping in around the edges. The Eastern Syndicate did the same. And I traded my delivery bike for an office in Adrian's building, a position that came with actual authority and a salary that meant my sister could finally move to a safer neighborhood. But some nights, I still went out on my old route. Still wore the gray hoodie. Still kept my ear to the ground, because peace was a living thing that needed tending. Adrian found me on one of those nights, leaning against my parked bike, watching the river where this all began. "Thinking about jumping again?" he asked, coming to stand beside me. "Always." I turned to him, to this man I'd pulled from darkness, who'd pulled me into light. But this time, we jumped together. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Below us, the river flowed on, carrying its secrets to the sea. Above us, the city glittered with possibility and danger and hope. We'd saved each other. Now, we were saving this. Together. And that's where Maya and Adrian's story brings us tonight, my beautiful souls. From the cold shock of a river rescue to the warmth of a partnership forged in fire and blood, we've watched two people who should have been strangers become each other's salvation. Maya jumped into that dark water without knowing if she could save him. She walked into enemy territory without knowing if she'd survive. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is take that leap, even when every logical bone in our body screams to stay safe, stay invisible, stay small. But here's what I love most about this story. Maya didn't just save Adrian that night on the bridge. She saved herself. She went from being invisible, from being nobody, to becoming the one person who could broker peace in a bleeding city. She chose to matter. And in choosing that, she changed everything. Love isn't always soft and safe, is it? Sometimes it's jumping into freezing water. Sometimes it's climbing cranes while bullets fly. Sometimes it's walking into a room full of people who want you dead, armed with nothing but the truth and desperate hope. But when you find someone worth taking that risk for, when you find someone who sees you, really sees you, even when the rest of the world looks right through you, that's when you stop asking if you should jump. You just do it. Now, before you go, I need you to do something for me. If this story moved you, If Maya and Adrian's journey made your heart race or gave you that delicious ache in your chest, hit that like button. Smash that subscribe button so you never miss another story that'll take you somewhere extraordinary. Drop a comment telling me, would you have jumped? Would you have taken that risk? I read every single one, and I love hearing from you. And here's the big one. Share this video. Send it to that friend who loves a good Mafia romance. Post it in your story. Because our little storytelling family grows when you spread the word, and every share means we get to keep bringing you these unforgettable tales. Tell me where you're watching from. Are you curled up in bed in London? Having morning coffee in Tokyo? I want to know. This community stretches across the whole world, and that never stops amazing me. Until next time, my kindred spirits, remember, sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the simplest choice.
To jump.
To risk.
To be seen. Stay brave.
Stay beautiful. And I'll see you in the next story.